Meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, herzlich willkommen. Ich bin Barbara Brot-Geiger und darf Sie als stellvertretende Direktorin der Volkshochschule Stuttgart im Namen des gesamten VHS-Teams und vor allem auch im Namen unserer Kooperationspartnerinnen sehr herzlich willkommen heißen zu unserer heutigen Veranstaltung. Thema heute ist Maria Kalesnikava, die Opposition in Belarus und der Ukraine-Krieg. Ein Willkommen an alle Besucher und Besucherinnen hier in der Volkshochschule in unserem schönen Theodor-Beuerle-Saal, aber auch an alle Besucher oder sagen wir mal Teilnehmerinnen im Livestream an den Bildschirmen. Die heutige Veranstaltung findet in Kooperation mit der Abteilung für Chancengleichheit und der Abteilung für Außenbeziehungen der Landeshauptstadt Stuttgart statt. Sie wird durchgeführt im Rahmen der Reihe Chancengleichheit für Frauen, 21 Tage gegen Gewalt. Ganz besonders herzlich möchte ich Sie, liebe Frau, jetzt muss ich es richtig aussprechen, Tatsiana Khomich, sie nickt, wunderbar, willkommen heißen. Sie sind die Schwester von Maria Kalesnikava und können somit sehr viel aus erster Hand berichten von ihrer persönlichen Situation, von der politischen Situation. Wir sind sehr gespannt und freuen uns sehr, dass Sie da sind. Vielen Dank und ein herzliches Willkommen. Ich denke im Namen aller. Ja, ein besonderes herzliches Willkommen auch an Sie, liebe Frau Dr. Sussmann. Wir freuen uns sehr, dass Sie als Bürgermeisterin für Soziales und gesellschaftliche Integration der Landeshauptstadt Stuttgart heute das Grußwort an uns richten werden. Schön, dass Sie da sind. Vielen Dank dafür. Liebe Frau Straub, ich gehe so der Reihe nach, Jetzt, liebe Frau Straub, ein ganz großes Dankeschön geht an Sie und Ihr Team für die Vorbereitung, für die Zusammenarbeit, für die Kooperation in dieser Veranstaltung, mit dieser Veranstaltung. Und wir haben ja schon mal was zusammen durchgeführt und freuen uns natürlich darauf, unsere Arbeit zu intensivieren, unsere Zusammenarbeit und auf viele weitere spannende Veranstaltungen. Vielen Dank und auch an Sie ein herzliches Willkommen. Ganz besonders begrüßen möchte ich auch unseren Moderator des heutigen Abends, Herrn Alexander Moskowitsch vom SWR, der durch den Abend führen wird und nachher gleich die Moderation übernehmen wird. Sehr schön, dass Sie da sind. Auch an Sie ein Dankeschön. Und last but not least, die Künstlerin des heutigen Abends, Frau Prof. Nicola Lutz. Von ihr sehen und hören wir einen künstlerischen Beitrag. Ich glaube, zum Schluss von der Veranstaltung, wie es vorgesehen ist. Auch an Sie ein herzliches Willkommen. Ich glaube, jetzt habe ich alle begrüßt und darf Ihnen, liebe Frau Dr. Sussmann, gleich das Wort übergeben und wünsche uns allen zusammen einen spannenden und erkenntnisreichen Abend. Vielen Dank.
So, dann darf ich Ihnen von mir auch noch herzlich willkommen zur heutigen Veranstaltung ausrichten. Wir freuen uns, dass Sie alle da sind, weil es ist wird ein bewegender Abend werden und besonders, dass Sie, Frau Tatsiana Khomich, trotz der Umstände, die Sie jetzt hatten, ich hatte es vorhin gesagt, Ihr Gepäck ist verloren gegangen und es ist jetzt auch alles sehr viel Stress für Sie. Sie sitzen jetzt hier. Vielen Dank, dass Sie sich die Mühe gemacht haben, heute zu uns zu sprechen, auch über Ihre Schwester zu sprechen und über die Zustände in Belarus. Wir werden durch Sie einen guten Einblick bekommen. Wenn wir zurückblicken, heute oder in 2 Tagen vor 75 Jahren hat Eleanor Roosevelt vor den Vereinten Nationen die Allgemeine Erklärung der Menschenrechte als Reaktion auf die Gräuel und Schrecken des Zweiten Weltkrieges erklärt und seitdem ist der 10. Dezember der internationale Tag der Menschenrechte. Die Menschenrechte sind von vielen Ländern in Deklarationen oder auch in Abkommen umgesetzt worden und werden auch von anderen vielen Ländern mit den Füßen getreten. Aber angesichts der fehlenden Allgemeingültigkeit, was auch ein Resultat vieler Flüchtlingsbewegungen sind, die momentan in unserer Stadt sind, die Leute fliehen vor Staaten, in denen sie ihre Meinung nicht veräußern können, in denen sie ihre Freiheiten nicht leben können. Und wir werden heute auch in ein Land schauen, in dem Menschenrechte nicht die Wertigkeit haben, wie wir es gewohnt sind in unserer demokratischen Welt und wollen uns anhand von dem Schicksal und auch von Maria Kalesnikava einen Eindruck von der Situation vor Ort verschaffen, aber auch allgemein, wie man in Belarus mit der Opposition umgeht. Auch die Tatsache, dass wir momentan wenig über Belarus hören. Wir nehmen es wahr, dass wir nichts wahrnehmen. Und gleichzeitig hat aber auch Belarus eine tragende Rolle in dem Krieg, der momentan alles überlagert, dem Angriffskrieg von Russland gegen die Ukraine. Und deswegen ist es wichtig, dass wir Anlässe haben, wie heute, einen Blick dorthin zu werfen, wo die Scheinwerfer momentan nicht hingerichtet sind. Uns wird natürlich interessieren, wie geht es der Gesellschaft, auch welche Folgen hat die Entwicklung innerhalb des belarussischen Machtgefüges, gibt es momentan eine Opposition und was ist seit August 2020 passiert, als wir alle völlig begeistert mit Ihnen in dieses Land geschaut haben, als wir friedliche Massendemonstrationen erlebt haben in einem Land, was als letzte Diktatur Europas gilt und damals auch galt. Und wir erinnern uns auch an die Bilder der 3 mutigen Frauen, Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya, Veronika Sapkaya und Maria Kalesnikava, die den Diktator Lukaschenko bei seinen Wahlen herausforderten. Und die einzige, die dort blieb, war ihre Schwester Maria, die nach den gefälschten Wahlen das gemacht hat, was für uns unvorstellbar ist, wohl wissend, was auf sie zukommen wird, dort zu bleiben in dem Land, in dem sie wusste, dass sie inhaftiert werden wird, sich zu opfern für die Freiheit, sich zu opfern für das Land. Sie ist dort geblieben, sie wurde verhaftet und ist dann seit September 2020 nahe der Grenze zur Ukraine inhaftiert. Sie musste viele Monate in Isolationshaft verbringen und Sie haben die Information erlangt, dass sich ihr Gesundheitszustand letzten November verschlechtert hat, dass sie notoperiert werden musste. Und soviel ich weiß, haben Sie seit Februar dieses Jahres keinen Kontakt mehr zu Ihrer Schwester und wissen momentan nicht, auch nicht über andere Quellen, wie es ihr geht und in welchem Zustand sie sich befindet. Wenn wir uns das vorstellen, eine junge Frau voller Talente in Isolationshaft ausgeliefert einem Regime, wo wir wissen, dass es nicht demokratisch geführt ist, wo sowas wie Gewaltenteilung, was für uns völlig selbstverständlich ist, eine freie Justiz, eine freie Presse nicht gewährleistet ist. Ich kann mir vorstellen, wie schwierig diese Situation für sie ist, das auszuhalten, machtlos daneben zu stehen und auch keine Möglichkeiten zu haben, Kontakt aufzunehmen. Maria Kalesnikava verbindet viel mit unserer Stadt. Sie hat in Stuttgart gelebt, sie hat an der Musikhochschule Querflöte studiert und es gibt auch die schöne Geschichte, dass gerade auch in der Anfangszeit, als sie noch Kontakt hatte, sie Partituren geschickt bekommen hat, wo sie, ohne dass sie es hören konnte, zumindest sich ablenken konnte anhand der Partituren. Und es ist auch über sie bekannt, dass für sie auch gerade das Thema Freiheit und Kultur sehr eng miteinander verbunden ist und dass natürlich auch in einer unfreien Welt oder auch in einem unfreien Land auch sehr schnell die Kultur geopfert wird. Ich freue mich deshalb auch, dass eine Weggefährtin von Maria, Frau Lutz von der Musikhochschule, heute Abend hier ist und Sie machen tatkräftig auch immer wieder auf das Schicksal von Maria aufmerksam, zuletzt durch die Installation am Wilhelmsplatz, die wir anschließend auch noch mal sehen werden. Und es ist wichtig, solche Zeichen zu setzen, weil wir merken, wie schnelllebig die Zeit ist. Die schlechten Ereignisse überholen sich. Wir merken es jetzt durch das, was im Nahen Osten passiert, schauen wir nicht mehr in der Ukraine. Und so wird unser Fokus immer wieder in eine andere Richtung gelenkt. Und es ist so wichtig, dass wir immer wieder dafür sorgen, dass all die Geschehnisse, all das, was passiert ist, immer wieder in unser Blickfeld rücken, auch wenn die Medien nicht mehr drauf schauen. Frau Tatsiana, Sie sind die Stimme Ihrer Schwester in Deutschland und auch in der ganzen Welt. Sie sind die Botschafterin Ihrer Schwester. Sie setzen sich nicht nur für Ihre Schwester ein, sondern Sie sprechen auch für über 1500 politische Gefangene und machen auch auf die Situation in der Opposition aufmerksam. Sie haben viele Preise für Ihre Schwester entgegengenommen und ich will nur einige davon erwähnen, weil das einfach auch die große Bedeutung Ihrer Schwester deutlich macht. Sie haben den Sacharow-Preis entgegengenommen, der für die geistige Freiheit steht und vom Europäischen Parlament verliehen wird. Sie haben den Preis der Lutherstätte, das unerschrockene Wort in Worms 2021 entgegengenommen. Genauso den internationalen Karlspreis im Jahr 2022 und im September 2023, also vor kurzem, würdigte die Kunstuniversität Graz ihre Schwester mit dem Ehrendoktor. Und all das wirft nur ein kleines Licht auf die großen Verdienste ihrer Schwester. Die Preise sind vor allem deshalb auch wichtig, weil sie genau dem dienen, einer Öffentlichkeit, einer Diskussion, einer Erinnerung. Und das ist das, was wir heute Abend auch machen wollen. Wir wollen Ihre Geschichte hören, wir wollen die Geschichte Ihrer Schwester hören, die stellvertretend für viele steht. Wir wollen das auch als Tag nehmen, um auch zu schauen, wie können wir Sie dabei unterstützen, nicht nur über das Thema der Kommunikation und der Öffentlichkeit, auch über das Thema der Haltung, wie wir auch intern mit außerstaatlichen Konflikten umgehen. Deswegen danke ich auch der Volkshochschule, ich danke Ihnen, Frau Straub, als Beauftragte für Chancengleichheit. Ich danke aber auch der Abteilung der Außenbeziehungen, dass Sie das heute möglich gemacht haben, genau dieses Thema zum Mittelpunkt des Geschehens zu machen. Und ich freue mich auch, dass wir einen erfahrenen Moderator, Herrn Alexander Moskowitsch vom SWR, heute hier auf der Bühne haben. Sie sind auch vertraut mit vielen Dingen, die dort vor Ort passieren und deswegen der ideale Gesprächspartner jetzt gleich auf der Bühne. Uns allen wünsche ich einen aufschlussreichen und auch einen nachdenklichen Abend, der heute nicht dabei bleiben wird, sondern für uns alle auch ein Auftrag ist, das, was wir heute erfahren, mitzutragen und auch immer wieder für das Thema Rechte, Freiheitsrechte einzustehen, in allen möglichen Formen, die sich uns tagtäglich in unserem Alltag bieten. In diesem Sinne gebe ich jetzt gerne an Sie weiter. Schön, dass Sie heute alle da sind.
Ja, guten Abend von meiner Seite. Vielen Dank, Frau Dr. Sussmann, vielen Dank auch Frau Prof. Für die einladenden Worte. Ich freue mich sehr, dass Sie heute hier sind. Frau Khomich, Sie hatten keine einfache Anreise, wir haben es eben gehört. Sie sind sehr viel unterwegs, sind das Sprachrohr für Ihre Schwester, die Stimme für Ihre Schwester und eine Opposition in Belarus, die eine sehr schwere Zeit hat, nicht nur seit 2020, sondern auch schon die letzten 30 Jahre, denn Alexander Lukaschenko ist bald seit 30 Jahren an der Macht in Belarus und auch darüber werden wir heute sprechen. Ich freue mich sehr, dass wir das Gespräch führen können und zwar werden wir es auf Englisch führen, deswegen haben Sie gesehen, liebe Zuschauerinnen und Zuschauer hier, die anwesend sind und auch vielleicht für die, die im Stream zuschauen. Wir haben zwar eine gemeinsame weitere Sprache, das wäre Russisch, aber damit würden wir hier vielleicht einige ausschließen und deswegen haben wir uns darauf geeinigt, dass wir das auf Englisch führen werden und die Kopfhörer, die Sie ja dann vorne abholen können, die meisten sehe ich hier im Raum, haben schon welche, da wird es eine Simultandolmetschung geben und die Englisch sprechen, die können dann eben genauso zuhören. Ein Hinweis vielleicht noch, wir werden am Ende Möglichkeiten haben, Fragen zu stellen, auch an Frau Khomich, entweder aus dem Publikum oder aus dem Stream. Da werde ich zwischendurch auch noch meine E-Mail-Adresse sagen oder bei YouTube können eben die Fragen direkt in den Chat geschrieben werden und dann werden wir sie aufgreifen. Jetzt haben wir schon viel über Frau Khomich und Frau Kalesnikava gesprochen und ich würde Sie jetzt gerne auf die Bühne bitten und dann, damit wir noch intensiver darüber sprechen können. Bitte schön. Tatsiana, before we talk about your sister's current situation, I would like to go a little bit back in time. As we heard before, your sister Maria has lived for many years here in Stuttgart. And as we talked before, you told me that you visited here, your sister also, your family visited her. So before she happened to be a politician, she was an artist, a musician, and we just heard that she was very active here in Stuttgart. Could you take us back and tell us, how did the time in Stuttgart influence her life? What did it look like when she was living back here? What kind of person was she?
Hello, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today, to share a story of my sister, story of myself, and story about Belarus, actually. And yeah, I hope that we still have perspectives, but probably today you will have an opportunity to maybe make your own conclusions and how you can help, how you can support, and think about the future of Belarus, of Maria and many other people. So Maria came to Stuttgart to study. She made 2 masters in Neue Musik and Alt Musik. She studied flute, and as she did it before in Belarus, she also taught children to play flute. She enjoyed it very much, but at some point she started to work more on different projects, and she switched to project management in art. I would consider it like that. And she also started to come more often to Belarus. I think it happened in 2015, 2016. With new projects actually also, and it was very, very new for Belarus. For example, she made lectures for adults on classical music. She tried to involve people, adults actually, and this uncovered the world of music for people in Belarus. And I think she had very good experience here in projects and studying in modern music. And Maria always admired or always liked new art, modern art. She traveled a lot in Europe and visited a lot of exhibitions, a lot of performances, concerts and so on. And at some point she decided that she also needs to bring it to Belarus, because for us it was not so popular, as if some waves and something that already is emerging in Western Europe didn't reach out to Belarus yet. So she was that person actually, in music especially, that started to bring it to bring, for example, she made an composers academy for Belarusian students, where she invited German composers to work with them in Minsk for a week. It was amazing. I also visited the concert after that, performance after that, with this more than very interesting projects. And she also brought some musicians and artists from Germany to Belarus at that point. And I think she's one of the person actually who started to develop modern culture in Belarus. And like that, in 2019, she got to know, she was introduced to Viktor Babarika. He was director of Belgazprom in branch of Belgazprom in Minsk in Belarus. Such an affiliation may pose a questions, but actually Viktor Babarika was very interested in developing Belarusian culture and bringing Belarusian art pieces like Mark Chagall. He's originally from Belarus, Haim Sutin, and he brought their pieces in Belarus. He was also recognized as one of the main mecenates in Belarus, developing theater, music, art galleries, and so on in Belarus, in Minsk. So at that point, Maria was invited also to become art director of Cultural Hub in Minsk, OK16. And this is how I think, maybe I move a little bit faster than you asked me. This is how she became closer to politics at the end.
That would be actually my next question, because as I said, she happened to be a politician. It was obviously not planned. Even though she got to know Viktor Babarika, at one point she ended up being on stage in front of many people together with Veronika Tsepkala and Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. So what happened from building bridges between Stuttgart, Germany and Belarus in a cultural way to running for president? How did that happen?
So Maria continued till May 2020. She continued to work on art projects in Belarus. For example, one of them also was dedicated to genocide and the question of genocide, and many others. And in May 2020, there were several days after when the presidential elections were announced to take place in August 2020. Several opposition candidates, new actually politicians, announced that they will run for presidency, and one of them was Viktor Babarika. And because of such a close work together with Maria before that, a year before that, on different, as I mentioned before, on different projects, they had a lot of ideas how to develop cultural space, cultural life of Minsk. Viktor invited and proposed Maria to join his initiative groups, his presidential campaign, be one of the managers, coordinators who can work on that. And she agreed. As she commented, that Maria commented before, that they had so many things in common, love to Belarus, Belarusian culture, and very good vision of new and future Belarus, independent, sovereign, prosperous. And I would like to admit that Maria was also very much interested in new technologies, actually, and a combination of different spheres, art and technology. And one of the projects actually that she also made in Belarus was with children, like orchestra of robots, and with one of the tech company. So I think this became kind of a common ground. Such a vision of future of Belarus became a common ground. That's why she joined and supported Viktor Babarika at that time. But just a month later, almost a month later, he was arrested. And I would like to admit that at that time, Maria called it also like Belarus has waken up, Belarusians has waken up. About 10,000 people joined Viktor Babarika's team to support him during presidential campaign. Myself, I also joined his team. And of course, to become a candidate, you should collect signatures. And we collected 535,000 signatures to support him. It was a record number, actually, for more than 30 years of independent Belarus. It never happened even for Lukashenko, I would admit. And after that, rather quickly, he was arrested. At that time already, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya announced that she would run instead of Sergei Tikhanovsky, her husband, who was already also arrested, even before, a little bit before end of May 2020. So, of course, we saw the tendency, we saw the risks, but we accepted it and we moved forward. And Valery Tsepkala, also one of the opposition candidates, he left the country because he got to know that the criminal case was raised against him I think something related to tax evasion or something like that. It was like an economical case. And there was a moment of 2-3 weeks of when it was not clear what would happen next. In the end of July, when they consider, like government and election commission consider who will run further or who will not run. And at that point, we decided, we understood that, okay, even if Viktor Babarika will not be able to move forward, we have a huge capacity, a lot of people who supports us. At that time, we started already to create alternative system for voting for presidential elections, to see the real numbers, the real statistics, the real support. So, and it was announced in middle of July that Svetlana Tikhanovskaya is allowed to move forward. Viktor Babarika, Valery Tsepkalova, no. And just 2 days after, such a trio appeared when we decided, okay, we should unite together and move forward. And of course, there were some conditions or like common ground taken that if Svetlana wins, all political prisoners should be released. At that point, there were, I think, probably up to 40-50 people already in prisons. So it's main, as I mentioned, main politicians, but also a lot of activists who worked with them, together with them. And that all political prisoners should be released, and that Svetlana will lead and hold new elections, fair elections at the end. So this is how the trio appeared at that point of Maria, Svetlana and Veronika.
As we see on this picture, the hopes were really high. Take us back to this time when you were about to start this new movement, where you saw you have so many signatures that you collected, people behind you, especially many women. What kind of spirit did you feel in Belarus back then?
It was very inspiring. I felt something that I have never felt before, actually. And I forgot to say that it was beginning of 2020, and all the world was worrying about the COVID and all consequences. But in Belarus, as you probably had already, Lukashenko denied that COVID exists. It's some kind of psychological imaginary problem, and while the whole world showed hundreds and thousands of people dying every day, Belarusian state statistics showed that like up to 10 people only. So it was like, you know, sport in the center of Europe, not touched by COVID. But of course, for people, it was obvious that it's a disaster. Everyone saw that relatives, friends, neighbors, and colleagues are dying. And there was not enough support, and there was not enough medical treatment and reaction, and it also provoked civil society to organize to help each other. And basically, there were not enough gloves, masks, even for doctors. So like such elementary things, and people really helped and provided this to hospitals and clinics all over the Belarus, but not such simple things, but also special but also, like, you know, this very comprehensive technical instruments that needed to treat COVID, and it was not just there in hospitals, and really civil society organizations organized it, brought it, ordered it to bring it from abroad, and so on. And it was clear that government was not ready, did not care, was not ready to provide such support and to protect people, actually. this is like one of the main responsibilities of the government at the end. And of course, a lot of people, I think a lot of people didn't understand it before, that government just does not care. And this was like the first trigger, kind of a trigger actually. But also I think that probably many countries around missed that Belarus significantly changed during last 5 years before 2020. I just want to remind that after 2010 presidential elections, there was isolation of Lukashenko, Belarusian regime, sanctions were introduced, the country was kind of isolated, but in 2014 sanctions were lifted, and government allowed actually to international support, to bring international support, investment inside the country. And at that point, I think they also missed that such support, such attention, such connections between Belarus and European Union countries, a lot of projects, like, you know, which are run and held by European Union or the US, helped actually to nurture civil society and also to grow businesses, small business, private businesses. And it changed mindset of the people. So it's like a pyramid of Maslow, when at some point you reach, when some basic needs you have, you need something more. You need like freedom, you need association, you need free press. So they definitely missed it, and also government missed this moment. And I think they didn't understand till the last possible moment. They didn't believe that people really will go to vote, that people will go to the streets and so on. And they thought that probably when they arrest several main politicians, everyone will be calm and nothing would happen. But as we see, such a trio of women who was not famous before, like even like several months ago, no one could expect, no one knew them actually. Maria is a musician and art project manager. Svetlana was a housewife, she didn't work for a long time. Before that she was a teacher, and Veronika was a manager in IT company, in tech company. So like, you know, very interesting combination. But at the end they were very popular and very inspiring. So the feeling was that I think in society that first of all many people would like to participate and bring something, to do something, because Maria also said a lot about it during this spring, summer months 2020, that actually everyone should take responsibility for your future, actually for yourself. Small steps, small actions, but if everyone does it, it changes the society, it changes the situation. So I think it found a huge response in people's hearts and minds at that time. And we saw that there were hundreds of thousands of people on the streets, and really people didn't afraid. But we also, as we discussed, and I think after that, inside Belarusian society, it was called that there were people who had never participated actually in any activities, opposition activities and demonstrations before, in 2010 or 2006, 2001. And it was a generation that has not been beaten, actually, because they didn't see, they didn't follow previous repressions, they didn't know what Belarusian regime actually could make. That's why people went on the streets.
But after the result of the election was clear, the hope was not as high as it was before, I guess. Lukashenko won, obviously, but everyone outside of Belarus, many countries criticized this outcome of the election. It was questioned, criticized. Svetlana Tikhanovskaya and Veronika Tsepkalo had to leave the country or left the country. Your sister was also tried to be forced out of the country. How did she manage to stay?
So Maria told from the very beginning, when Viktor Babarika was arrested, his son Eduard Babarika was the head of the initiative group. Eduard is a young entrepreneur, very successful, and at that time he was very famous, actually inspiring. And when they were arrested already, Maria said that she would not leave the country because her friends, her colleagues are already in prisons, and it's also her responsibility to stay to help to support them. And Svetlana left the country. She basically was forced to leave the country next day after elections. And Veronika left one day before elections, and she joined her husband in exile already. And for Maria, I think it was decided like long time before that she would not leave. And first days after elections, there were huge repressions. So we know that at least 35,000 people were detained in just several first days, and they started to leave pre-trial detention centers, also like the rest of them after 2-3 days, and people were literally blue because they were beaten like everywhere, on the legs, on the back, arms, and it was clear that because no one knew what's happening for 2 days. Yes, there were also protests in the evening, at night. People were detained. No one understood what's happening like after, and they also switched off the internet actually in the country, and it started, as far as I remember, just in the evening, like at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., just to not let people know where to gather, yes, where to meet in Minsk and so on, and not to share the information, of course. And just after that, the next like trigger also, so like the first one after elections, I mean, there was clear falsification that we saw on independent data, independent voting system, that most probably Svetlana Tikhanovskaya got more than 50% of votes. We don't know exact amount, but it was clear that it's not the Lukashenko who won the elections.
The official numbers were Lukashenko 80% and Tikhanovskaya was around 10%, just to like show the margin.
Yeah. And the second trigger was such repressions that people really, as I mentioned before, people who was not beaten before, they saw that it could happen actually, and they went on the streets and they went to protest against the violence from the government. And at that point, of course, Maria also stayed in the country, and there was like, it was not clear what to do next. Svetlana left the country, and of course it's difficult to manage something from outside actually in such a situation when part of the team stayed inside the country, and she was almost alone. She left almost alone to Vilnius, to Lithuania, and there was a decision to create coordination council to promote dialogue between Belarusian civil society and political organizations and Belarusian government. Just 2 days after that, it was in August, 2 days after that, or 1 day after that, there was a criminal case raised against Coordination Council. like kind of conspiracy and so on. And at that point, there were really attempts to say to Belarusian government, like, look what's happening. People against the result of elections, people against their such violence from your side, and also these people who are already detained, they should be released, because like the real leaders are in prisons. And at that point there was no reaction actually. So I mean, the only reaction from government was the violence. And Maria was kidnapped on 7th September 2020 in the center of Minsk. And for one day we didn't know what's happening to her. Like lawyers tried to find her in different organizations like KGB and also pretrial detention centers and so on. No one just wanted to say anything. They just like refused to recognize that she's there. And next day in the morning, they brought her to the border with Ukraine, and pushed in the car and wanted her to leave the country. And she tore up her passport immediately and got out of the car through the window and went back to the territory of Belarus. And she said after that all this day when she was kidnapped, they also tried to convince her to leave the country, threatened her, told that she would leave country dead or alive, or she will leave country cut in pieces and so on. Threatened also to make harm to her relatives. But she refused all the time. She stayed strong, I would say. And I understand that she knew at that point, yes, that it's a real threat actually, yes, to her, that if she will not do it, she will go to prison. Yeah.
You said she said strong. We see here a picture that was taken during the trial after she was arrested. Like you said, there was a trial and she was officially sentenced to 11 years of jail, officially according to the Belarusian authorities, for extremism, conspiring to seize the power illegally, damaging state security. The verdict was condemned though by the European Union and US politicians, also German politicians, human rights activists globally too. So let's jump to the situation today. What does that actually mean for your sister's life since then, being a political prisoner in Belarus?
So I would say that situation is definitely, probably you don't see it from outside, but it's changing inside. It's getting worse. When Maria was detained, there were 50 political prisoners. As of today, there are more than 1,500 political prisoners, and more than 1,300 already left the prisons because their terms were over. So they spent all the terms in prisons already. And people are detained literally, basically every day. And during last months, we see that it even grows. Up to 600 people detained every month. Some of them charged with criminal cases. It means that they will stay in prisons for several years. Some of them with administrative cases. So it can be detention for 15 or 30 days, or they can be fined. The reasons also like pretty the same. So it's participation in the demonstrations, and Belarusian authorities use advanced technical equipment actually to look for photos in the internet and videos in the internet, and they still find people who were in the protests in 2020. And also one of the reasons to detain people is donations. Donations to support political prisoners or civil society organizations that they made also in 2020-2021. And starting from 2022, people donate to support Ukraine, and they also detain because of that, and they can be sentenced to 2, 3, up to 5 years in prisons, because all actually organizations that civil society organizations that support political prisoners in Belarus recognized as extremist organizations or something like that, close to that, and also a lot of media recognized as extremist organizations or materials, and people also arrested because they put likes or comments on such independent social media, and or they share it, just send it to their relatives and friends. So it started already, I think, in 2021 when you just walk on the street, you could be arrested, or you could be stopped at some point, and you'll be asked to show your phone, show like social media messengers, and just like a quick look, what do you read actually there? And if you subscribe to some independent media, you will be arrested. And of course, they also use such technical equipment to find who is subscribed on Instagram, on Facebook, on Telegram, who is following something. And it's really not so difficult to find people actually who is it at the end and where do they live. So that's why we can see that as there were hundreds of thousands of people on the streets, there is a huge potential for arrests actually. And even though many people were forced to leave the country also because they were afraid to be persecuted, arrested, and different numbers. There are no official statistics from Belarusian government and authorities. Up to 500 people already left the country. Belarusians go to Lithuania, to Poland, also to Germany, to Georgia. They left also to Ukraine firstly, but of course they faced a double migration after the full-scale war started in February 2022.
You mentioned before that you haven't had any contact to your sister for several months now. What was your last information? How is she keeping up, and where does she take the energy from when you still were in contact with her?
So last time we had any information about Maria and any contact source. Someone of us could see her, was a lawyer, and it was in February, so almost 10 months ago. And I would like to admit, that at that point she just underwent surgery on ulcer. And it happened because in November 2022, Maria was pushed in a punishment cell. So it's like a typical measure, actually, which is used in colonies and prisons by Belarusian authorities to put more pressure. And it's a small room, about 3 square meters. Prisoners allowed to have just some personal clothes with them, maybe soap, towel, toothbrush, and toothpaste, and toilet paper. So that's it. Usual term is 10 days. They are not allowed to go outside. There is no bed linen. There is just a wooden bench usually, or iron bench that is closed during the day, and during the night you can sleep on that. So it's closed. You cannot sit, you cannot lay during the day, and it's very cold there. So Maria was there in November, and she told after that she could not almost sleep during these 10 days being in a punishment cell, and she had to walk all the time. At some point she did 15,000 steps, just imagine in such a small room, just to get a little bit warmer and to be able to sleep at night. And she started to feel not well. She lost her conscience several times, several days already in a row. She had a pain, of course, and she complained, but they didn't react. And of course, we see it also towards other political prisoners. It really happens often. In Belarusian prisons, colonies, pretrial detention centers, there is no like real hospital, no real treatment, advanced treatment, and it's also common attitude to political prisoners when they complain, they are sick, but administration just does not react to their complaints until it's like really like, you know, very, very critical, they almost die. When they see it, then they try to start to do something. And of course, you can imagine that when there was a COVID, so they really didn't react. There were like cells with 10 up to 20 people in one cell, in one chamber. And if someone got COVID, after that everyone got COVID. And they were not treated at all, like just like really nothing. Even they were not allowed to measure temperature to understand what is it. They just put the whole chambers, the whole room on a quarantine, and that's it. And we don't know now. We don't know exactly. There were some deaths, of course, in such a situation when there were thousands of people who were detained. Death cases, but till now we don't know exactly, because people are afraid to speak up, actually, to share this information. So Maria was in such a punishment cell, and she was brought to the hospital really at the last possible moment, as she always commented after that. Doctors saved her in a civil hospital. She was brought to Gomel. Literally save her, and of course colony did not tell anything about it to relatives, that she's sick, that she was brought to hospital. We got to know about it from the anonymous resources. Just someone from the hospital sent a message, and after that we started to check, and in the hospital administration confirmed that she's there. So we can see how they try to hide all the information, all the faults also, and mistakes. And after that, Maria told that she lost about 15 kilograms. Of course, it's an ulcer, and food in the colony is very bad, is very poor, actually. It's not dietary food, and they do not provide it if you need it, actually. And she could not eat well for 2 months almost. That's why she lost weight. But after that, in February, any communication stopped, like letters, we had the calls. I talked to her last time, it was in 2022. Even we talked several times on video messenger, and it was just short calls, 5 minutes, like that. But even more than a year ago, she was told that you will not be able to talk to your sister anymore. And she talked to our father on phone, also just short calls. You are not allowed to talk about like any political situation, just to maybe ask how are you, about something, about relatives, some news and so on, because everyone is standing, we know that every time we spoke, someone is standing close to Maria who is listening and following what we are talking about. And when we talked on video, they also, of course, watched what's happening there, is whether I was alone or not, or where I was. And also lawyers were not allowed from February 2023, are not allowed to visit her. and no calls, as I mentioned, no letters, no visits of relatives. We just got to know that she also kept in a kind of a punishment cell. She's alone. She's in solitary confinement for 10 months probably, and such conditions allow her to go outside for 30 minutes every day. Before that, she worked also. There is a kind of a clothing factory where women prisoners sew military clothes and something like that, or some uniform for different organizations, and medical, but also military. And now Maria doesn't work also, and I understand it because also I don't hear from other families that someone saw Maria, at least before. She was kept in a kind of a tribe where there were up to 80 people, so at least some social communication. She was not allowed also to talk to people, and she was told that if she would try, it's not Maria who would be punished, but actually people who talk to her would be punished, also to make her responsible for that. And of course, she didn't provoke such conversations with other women in the colony, just to make them safer, actually, in such a situation. So what I see, what I understand now, that such an isolation, it's incommunicado detention, started for several main popular people, political prisoners, from February-March. The same happened to Viktor Babarika, to Sergei Tikhanovsky, Nikolai Statkevich, Igor Losik, Maxim Znak also. So now I understand that most probably it would last for longer months, because there are parliamentarian elections in Belarus in end of February next year. So what we see, as I mentioned before, more people detained every month. So it's kind of also a new wave of repressions, just to suppress everything, so that no one, speak up. Nothing appeared at all, no comments, no photos and so on. Of course, no protests actually. It's not possible actually for 2 years already. People are so frightened, people are so scared to do anything, because they see thousands of cases of people who were detained for that.
Before we talk about Alexander Lukashenko and also the role of women during this protest and in Belarus generally, eine kurze Erläuterung noch, dass Fragen gestellt werden können nach unserem Gespräch per E-Mail. Alle, die im Stream zuschauen, können das machen, entweder im Chat oder eine Mail an politik.fragen@vhsstuttgart.de. So, talking about Alexander Lukashenko, he is obviously the main reason and responsible person for your sister's situation, and also the other many people who are detained and were sentenced because they were maybe wrong time, wrong place, or even just put a like or a comment for something oppositional, some oppositional content. But speaking about Alexander Lukashenko, as I mentioned before, he has been in power for almost 30 years now. Many people call him Europe's last dictator. You grew up in Belarus and basically almost all your life that was the president you were confronted with. What kind of system does this person represent in your eyes?
So I think that first signs appeared at the end of 90s. So the first disappearances actually happened. People who were even close to Lukashenko, but who opposed him. And there were ex-minister of internal affairs, for example, Zakharenko, he disappeared. I don't remember exactly the year, it was 98 or 99. Businessman Krasovsky and several others. And I mean, it was clear from the very beginning, like, you know, it was not just so massive. And I think fortunately we didn't see such disappearances during last 25 years at least. But of course such violence response to every elections, falsified elections, I mean, and response to protests after every elections, we saw it almost every 5 years. So the system actually changed a lot during these last 3 years, I would say.
It got worse, you mean?
It got worse. It got more violent. It got more militarized. And like, you know, that there are several structures who received carte blanche, who detain people brutally, really brutally. They allowed to torture people also once they detain them. So basically they what could happen, like, you know, every morning at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., just someone knock on the door, and okay, they announce that, like, open the door. If you will not open, we will break it, and they will break it if you will not open. And of course, people beaten with, there can be even different subjects used to beat people. The flat is searched and they're brought to the such an authority, like, because there are different of them. The most brutal, I would say, it's Gubopik, organized crime. Those who should fight the organized crime, actually, and they also reoriented to arrest protesters, actually. And people are forced to record videos when they recognize their fault, that they're guilty, and so on. To basically, it's like put yourself like in such a situation and say that, recognize everything on the video, and they put this video after that online, you know, on their social media channels. And people, of course, as I mentioned about conditions, yes, in prisons, it's basically a torture, and we see that it's really massive. It's everywhere, like, and the same with incommunicado. In different colonies, all these people are held in different places, but at some point it happened. So it's very centralized, and we understand that there are just several people, or even one person, who can decide which conditions will be applied to these people. Because, like, of course, we try to got to know why is it forbidden, and like some official complaints from lawyers and so on, just to got to know what's happening. And, like, you know, you understand that these people they do not decide anything. I mean, in colonies and administration, they do not decide anything at the end. There is some kind of they are not, like, they are responsible, of course, but someone from
they are just executing,
basically,
executing
some orders that were given
from higher
levels. Yeah.
So talking about the image that Lukashenko and the system has of women, because we saw the picture before of your sister and the other two female candidates. There were a lot of women, as you said, going on the streets and demonstrating. I would like to read out a short quote of Lukashenko. He said once in an interview that the constitution of Belarus is not suitable for a woman, and the society is not ready to vote for a woman. Because the constitution gives strong authority to the president, and later he added that being a president in Belarus is such a hard burden that the woman would collapse under it. And thinking of this, and then seeing three female candidates, or three women running for president, being united, and so many women also protesting for them. What does it tell us about this basically connection or disconnection between the image of women that Lukashenko and the system has and the image of women that exists in the social society in Belarus?
I think that it just proves that Belarusian authorities and Lukashenko himself, they underestimated the civil society and also women themselves. And it was proved just several weeks after he announced that. Actually, it was in June 2020, and just several weeks after, we saw how how people are inspired, and that really Svetlana Tikhanovskaya is one of the from the trio, but who was a real candidate. She was massively supported by people, and at the end. I would like to admit that Lukashenko has never seen so much people supporting him. During these 30 years, like hundreds of thousands or even millions of people on the streets, it never happened. And he held also like state demonstrations. Also, I think it was just before the elections, or several days after, there were probably several thousand people, 10, 20,000 people maximum, but these people were brought from all over the Belarus. They put people, like, in buses and bring them in Minsk. This is how it's happening, because they have an order, of course, to bring some people from different regions, and they don't have a choice. Actually, these people, because they are taught. They know that they have been said that they will be fired or something like that, and they do it. So it happened like that. And of course, I think, that they miss that society changed a lot, even in 2020. And I would say that probably after such repressions, and they expect that people will, become the same as they were before 2020, but no, it could not happen actually.
And I mean, stay silent, basically.
I mean, stay silent and indifferent, and
apolitical,
like Lukashenko again. No, it's not possible. If you saw such repressions, if you know that for 3 years, more than 3 years already, thousands of people went through prisons. They are tortured. You will never change your position, and you will never change your mind.
One of the main reasons why Lukashenko can keep his regime and his power is the support by Russia. As we see, he's very close partners with Russia, economically, strategically, military especially. What about the people in Belarus? I mean, it's almost 2 years of war now. Russia invaded Ukraine, as we all know. How are people in Belarus, how are they looking at this war, and especially the role of Belarus? Because we all know that also troops from the south of Belarus attacked the north of Ukraine, so Putin used Belarus and this partnership in a military way. How are the people in Belarus looking at this war and the role of their country?
I think, of course, in February 2022, it was a surprise for everyone inside and I think outside of Belarus, and probably even for Belarusian government, actually, that they didn't know till the last moment that it would happen. Though there were a lot of Russian army already, and people in Belarus, majority of population is against the war, like up to 85% actually, because I would say that during our history, Belarus was an arena for many wars, coming back and forwards, and people really remember it. It's like historical memory for us that it should never happen again. Like really, it's. I think it's somewhere in our code, in our blood already, and that's why, of course, people do not support it. And even
But they cannot show it, right?
They cannot show it. They showed it in 2022 when it started. Several days after that, there was a referendum on changing the constitution, and people used this moment to protest against the war. Actually, I think it was like also one of the last possible moments when they went to. Of course, they didn't want to vote on referendum, but they used this moment just to stay outside of the such small election committees and just to stay and protest silently. At that day, more than 1,000 people were detained all over Belarus, but I mean, they protested. And of course, immediately, those who expressed something against the war on social media also were arrested. And it's happening until now, so like if you put something, I'm against the war, you will be arrested in Belarus. But we see that it doesn't change during almost 2 years also. Though there is a huge Russian propaganda, actually Belarusian propaganda uses Russian narratives, put it inside the messages. But at the end it doesn't change, and I think it's also that we don't know exactly whether Putin pushed Lukashenko to participate in the war. Like, you know, there are different opinions that probably it happened, but we don't know actually at the end. But I think this is what the big difference between probably Russian society and Belarusian society, that such imperialistic motives alien to us, like, really, because yes, we are a smaller country, smaller population, which suffering actually for centuries during the Soviet Union, because of Russian Empire before, and so on. So it's not our like attitude, like, you know, to our neighbors. It's more about communication, making friendship, and making good relationships. So yeah, that's why it's not popular among Belarusians at the end. And there were also social data about whether people are ready to participate, and there was just several % of those who said yes, like we support it. So it shows, and I think it shows very clearly the difference from opinion in Russia.
So we talked about this whole scenery, and it seems like there are not many perspectives. At least there was a little moment of enlightenment basically when there was this campaign and when your sister and the two other women ran for president. But since then, when we look at this situation, as you said, what is the perspective from your point of view, looking back at this protest and such a positive mindset and energy? What is the way Belarus could take in the next few years from your side?
I think it's very important that even though people are afraid to make something publicly, they proceed to do it. And also we see, regarding the previous question, that Belarusians started, there was created kind of a Telegram channel where people provided information about movements of Russian equipment across Belarus. It's very popular. It's like up to 500,000 subscribers there, and around 30,000 Belarusians provided information during these almost 2 years. So like it's also like, you know, the way you express your attitude, but it also gives you a chance to participate, like to, if you're against it, you make an action, yes, and of course it's also very dangerous. Some people were found who did it, but also it's a chance to participate. We didn't talk about it, but also more than 1,000 NGO were closed in Belarus. Some of them, most of the people who worked, they left the country because any of them considered actually as also a lot of them recognized as extremist organizations or materials, but any activity, social activity, civil activity considered as something that can provoke future protests, like yes, and even if it's bird watching organizations like that, you know, it's not about like anti-propaganda or something like that, and human rights. It's even like something very I would say
marginal, yeah.
Yeah, I mean vegetarian. I would say, yeah,
harmless,
like you know, very very simple. But as soon as these provide possibility to make association, to make people, to make community, they basically of course they're afraid of it. But people still proceed such, of course, grassroots activities, and this is very important, and I think it should preserve. And we hear a lot, yes, that it's very difficult, and we see it, of course, ourselves, working with, just talking with, working with families of political prisoners. It's very difficult to reach out to people or to help or to proceed with any activities because of questions of security. But of course, many of us from Belarusian democratic movement try to do it. And it's really, it's very, very important. The second point, of course, we understand that, of course, Ukraine will never be safe if Belarus will not be a democratic country. And this is a common interest, I think, for Ukraine, for European Union also, and neighbors, to democratize Belarus at the end. And I believe that there could be a chance also, as you mentioned, like window of opportunity. But for that, we also need that European countries and US continue to support Ukraine. Yes, so that, I mean, you know, even if one of the countries will not be democratic, yes, or, yeah, it means there will be a lot of, I mean, it can happen again and again, in 5 years, in 10 years, and so on. It could repeat. So I think it should be considered really like a global, such a regional security issue together, and such a situation when there will be negotiations on between Ukraine and Russia. Of course, I think Belarus should be included in it because Lukashenko supported Putin and supported Russia and played a role, huge role in it actually during the first months of the war. But it means that it also should be used actually to secure Ukraine and European Union countries and Belarus itself. Yeah. So it's also a common goal for Belarusian democratic forces to make such a creative window for political changes inside the country.
Unfortunately, we are running a little bit out of time, so I would like to basically ask whether there are questions from the audience. Gibt es Fragen? Ihrerseits gerne auch auf Deutsch, die werden dann übersetzt oder genau. Vielleicht an Frau Khomich. Wenn es keine Fragen gibt, oh ja, bitte.
Könnte es sein, vielleicht geht die Frage zu weit, dass eben Putin Angst hatte, dass die Ukraine so weit geht, wie Belarus gegangen ist, also die Bevölkerung, und dass das ein Grund für diesen Einmarsch war?
Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure that I understood the question. I think Putin afraid that Belarus will make the same that Ukraine did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
maybe. I think yes.
Yeah. Yes. I agree that. I think that it's also like Russia who missed this moment actually, that the liberalization of Belarus during these 5 years before 2020, and they used such a leverage, economic leverage especially, after 2020, and we see it now, and it's also a huge problem now for us actually, for Belarus, because it's not just that Russia and some other countries, they give money, but they also help to overcome the sanctions. Different countries, so they found a way out, and so it helped for the Belarusian regime to survive and continue. But such an isolation also, you know that there is a flight ban. There are no flights from Minsk and to Minsk also. People started to travel more to Russia. Yes, we still can have visas, and a lot of people travel from Belarus to European Union, though it's really very difficult to get the visas. We of course understand that for Lithuania and Poland it's also a security question, yes, who could come and arrive, because we hear a lot about security forces or intelligence forces that develop their work in Lithuania and Poland because of in Germany also, I think, because of Russian Belarusian opposition who established there, but also when other investment businesses could not come to Belarus. Some of them moved out already, of course, but they cannot come, but Russian businesses can come. So, and Russian products and Russian media, Russian propaganda. So it's very difficult also, especially of propaganda, to fight it back, also from outside. And I mean, it's kind of Russification of the country. And this is a huge problem to how to deal with it, how to fight it back. So I would say that it slowly grows, but it's very, very slowly grows. But I think that yes, we should not. That's why we should not stop. I mean, supporting Belarus. I mean, European countries and programs that could happen. Could work also and try to work inside Belarus. It should happen just to fight the same Russian propaganda and such a slow colonization of the country.
And supporting also the actions of Belarusian oppositional people like you. Maybe very last short brief answer if possible. What can people in Germany do for the political prisoners in Belarus?
I would suggest to donate, actually, to support families. This is what needed all the time, because when you have someone in prison, you need to bring packages, and it's several times a year, up to 500 euro, so several times a year, and average salary, monthly salary, less than 500 euro at the end. So just imagine, and political prisoners, so it's usually some of the parents, like mother or father and several children, some of the parents is in prison. And it's really very, very hard, it's very, very difficult for people for one woman or one man to help, to support. Or other issue also, sometimes it's just parents, like pensioners already, who need to support their child who is in prison. And of course it's all the time worth doing to write letters, but yeah, we don't know whether they receive them. But it's also a way to show administrations that of colonies and prisons that people pay attention to situation in Belarus, they continue watching and so on, following the cases of specific political prisoners also, so that they know about it. And I would suggest, maybe yes, I can share some organizations who support political prisoners. It's by soul, it's politzek.me. Maybe we can later
maybe
share
people
the
can
addresses.
come afterwards and you can share it. Okay, so basically what you said and what is always the thing you try to suggest is that we talk about it as we did today, so we keep the media and the public presence at this topic, because we know there are many other topics that take away the attention.
I would just add one point, that there is a kind of a program of symbolic support of political prisoners from parliamentarians, and dozens of German parliamentarians actually did it. It's a kind of God Parenthood campaign, and you can ask your representatives, yes, parliamentarians, what did you do to support political prisoners? And specifically, because many of them already try to do it, and it's very, very good. Even if they speak on the social media, they share the information from time to time. But also there could be a question, what did you make to release this person who sentenced to 5, 10, 15 years in prison? It's also very important, because what we didn't talk today, just to mention that I would say we are in a kind of a deadlock because of situation in Ukraine. It's not resolved. It's also it's not clear how long it will last. But we also hear kind of there is no readiness from European politicians, US side, to act somehow on release of political prisoners. So everyone is expecting what will happen in Ukraine, and then we will have a chance to release people, to help and so on, but we cannot wait for many years. I didn't mention also that, just shortly, that it's a huge problem. Several people already died in prisons. It was this year. Alice Pushkin, artist, died because of ulcer, actually. So he had the same as Maria, but they didn't save him. So they were late to provide medical treatment. He was just 57 years old. In May, Nikolai Klimovich, activist, 61 years old, he died in prison also. And he had heart diseases and so on, but nevertheless he was put in a colony. And there are more than 200 people with very, very hard, difficult health situation, also with cancer, with diabetes, high blood pressure, heart diseases and so on, and with disabilities, and they're not treated. So at least European countries should, diplomats of course, should pay attention, of course, remind all the time that they are watching what's happening in Belarus, that the situation is not forgotten, and also to demand their release, actually. Maybe not all of them in one day, but okay, it can be some kind of a process that they can establish, actually.
So put pressure on Belarus politically and also spread the word like we did today. Thank you very much, Tatsiana Khomich, for you coming here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.